How does a name synonymous with elegance and beauty become forever stained with blood? Stand outside a Milan office building where marble steps once gleamed with the shoes of Italy's elite. Now those same steps remember only one morning, one man, 4 bullets. This is where fashion died and murder was born. Picture Florence in 1921. The cobblestone streets smell of leather and rain. Inside a modest workshop, a man bends over a workbench, his hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. He is not cutting flesh, but hide, transforming raw material into something that speaks of worlds beyond this small room. His name is Maurizio Gucci, and he carries within him a vision born in the glittering halls of London's Savoy Hotel, where he once worked among trunks and cases that whispered of distant places and lives lived in perpetual motion. What did he see in those polished corridors that planted this seed? The wealthy moved through that hotel like visiting gods, their luggage, an extension of their power, their taste, their refusal to be ordinary. Gucci had studied them the way an artist studies light. He understood something fundamental about human desire. We do not simply want beautiful things. We want things that announce who we are before we speak a single word. So he began. A small shop. Leather goods crafted with an attention to detail that bordered on obsession. Every stitch mattered. Every curve of a handle, every brass fitting, every interior pocket carried intention. This was not merely commerce. This was the creation of a language. And the language said refinement, heritage, the weight of Italian history compressed into objects you could hold. The double G logo emerged not as marketing, but as a signature, a maker's mark that would outlive the maker. In those early years, the family worked together in that workshop, the smell of tanned leather mixing with ambition. Sons learned at their father's side. The business was not yet an empire. It was still a craft, still connected to the hands that shaped it. But already, something was taking root that Gucci could not have foreseen. Success has a gravity all its own. It pulls people toward it. It changes them. The modest craftsman's dream of creating beautiful things was about to collide with a force older and more dangerous than any design. The human hunger not just to have, but to possess, to control, to win. The workshop in Florence held more than leather and thread. It held the seeds of a tragedy that would span generations, destroying the very family that built the name everyone would come to know. The sons understood what their father had built, but they saw further. Aldo, Vasco, Ugo, and Rodolfo Gucci inherited not just a business, but a hunger, a kind of vision that extended beyond Florence's ancient walls toward the glittering capitals of the world. What begins as a family workshop in one city becomes something larger, something that will eventually devour those who created it. In 1953, a Gucci boutique opened on Fifth Avenue in New York City at the Savoy Plaza Hotel. The timing carried a cruel irony. 2 weeks after the doors opened to American aristocracy and Hollywood's elite, Gucci died at 72 years old. He never saw what his name would become in that city, never walked those polished floors where women in silk gloves would reach for bags bearing his initials. The old craftsman passed, and in his place stood his sons, ready to transform craft into empire. Aldo Gucci took the lead. Picture him moving through the narrow streets of Florence, already dreaming in continental terms. He understood something his father perhaps did not fully grasp. A luxury brand is not merely about the object itself, but about the world it promises entry to. Every Gucci store became a portal, a threshold between ordinary life and the realm where beauty, wealth, and status converged into something approaching transcendence. The 1950s and 60s became Gucci's golden age, though no one then could know what price that gold would exact. Stores opened in London in 1961. Palm Beach followed. Paris embraced the double G logo that Aldo himself designed, those two letters intertwining like a monogram of destiny. Tokyo, Hong Kong. Each boutique positioned on the most prestigious streets, among the most expensive real estate, where rent alone spoke of exclusivity. But it was the celebrities who truly crowned Gucci as fashion royalty. Audrey Hepburn carried their bags. Grace Kelly, Princess of Monaco, received a silk scarf designed specifically for her, the flora pattern blooming with such vitality that it would be reinterpreted for decades. Elizabeth Taylor draped herself in Gucci. And then there was Jacqueline Kennedy, First Lady of the United States, photographed again and again with a particular Gucci hobo bag, its piston strap closure creating a silhouette that became iconic. The bag was later renamed in her honor the Jackie, and it became one of the most photographed accessories of the 1970s. This was no accident. This was calculated magic. The Gucci brothers understood that when a woman of Jackie Kennedy's stature carried your bag, she was not simply transporting her belongings. She was making a statement about taste, about belonging to a particular stratum of existence where every detail mattered. Fashion had always been about class, but Gucci made it about aspiration given form. The green-red-green stripe appeared on everything, inspired by the saddle straps from the company's equestrian roots. The bamboo-handled bag, created during wartime leather shortages, transformed scarcity into elegance. The horsebit loafer, introduced into 1953, became a footwear legend, that metal ornament speaking to heritage while walking into the future. Every design element told a story, and every story said the same thing. You are part of something extraordinary. Wealth poured in, properties accumulated. The Gucci family lived as their clientele did, in a world where luxury was not occasional, but constant, not special, but baseline. Private estates, exclusive parties where fashion and power mingled like champagne and caviar. They had transcended their origins so completely that the workshop in Florence seemed like ancient history, a quaint story to tell at dinner parties. Yet something was already wrong, already festering beneath the gleaming surface. Success magnifies everything, including human weakness. 4 brothers meant 4 different visions, 4 egos, 4 claims to the throne. Aldo dominated the expansion, making decisions that shaped the brand's international identity. But Rodolfo ran the Milan operations with his own fierce pride. Disagreements began as whispers, questions about strategy, about money, about who truly deserved credit for Gucci's ascent. The family that worked together in that Florence workshop now inhabited separate worlds, connected by a name they all claimed but increasingly could not share. Business meetings became battlegrounds. Dinners turned tense. Brothers who once collaborated now competed, measured themselves against each other, wondered who contributed more, who deserved more, who would ultimately control the empire their father had seeded with his scarred, leather-working hands. No one outside the family fully understood yet. The boutiques still sparkled. The celebrities still posed with Gucci products. The brand radiated success, glamour, the promise that you too could belong to this gilded world if you simply carried the right bag, wore the right shoes, draped yourself in the right silk. But empires built on family are fragile. Blood that binds can also strangle. And the Gucci brothers, for all their brilliance in understanding desire and luxury and aspiration, did not understand the most dangerous thing they had created. Not a brand, but a prize. A prize that would eventually need a single winner. A prize that some would kill for. When Vasco Gucci died childless in 1974, the mathematics of ownership shifted. What remained was not 3 brothers balancing each other, but 2, Aldo and Rodolfo, each now holding exactly 50% of the empire. Equals on paper. But equality, when applied to men who have spent decades accumulating grievances, becomes the most unstable arrangement imaginable. Aldo resented the arithmetic. He had opened the New York store, he had courted the celebrities, he had built the international network while Rodolfo managed Milan, designed scarves, lived comfortably on profits Aldo felt he himself had generated. 50% felt like theft to a man who believed he deserved 70, 80, perhaps everything. So Aldo did what ambitious men do when they cannot change the rules. He found a way around them. A perfume subsidiary emerged, Gucci Perfumes, structured so that Aldo and his 3 sons controlled 80%, while Rodolfo held only 20%. The message was clear. If I cannot dominate the main company, I will create parallel kingdoms where I reign absolutely. Rodolfo understood the maneuver. He protested. They reached some accommodation, adjusting the percentages, but the wound had been made. Trust, once the mortar-holding family enterprises together, had begun to crumble. Meanwhile, the 3rd generation was rising. Paolo Gucci, Aldo's middle son and chief designer, understood craft but craved recognition. His vision conflicted with Rodolfo's authority. When his uncle designed a handbag and showed it to Paolo, the younger man threw it out the window. The relationship shattered. By the mid-1970s, board meetings had become performances of hostility. Paolo was publicly upbraided during presentations. In 1978, Aldo offered escape. Come to New York. Be vice president of marketing. Paolo accepted, but the move created complications that led to his termination from the Italian company. He wanted more than a title. He wanted recognition as a creative force in his own right. In 1980, without telling his father or uncle, Paolo launched his own line, the Paolo Gucci collection, his own initials, his own vision. He believed he had earned this independence after decades of service, after being thrown the scraps of acknowledgement while others took credit for his designs. Aldo and Rodolfo saw betrayal. You work for Gucci, you are Gucci. You do not compete with Gucci. They fired him in September of 1980. Then they sued to prevent him from using the family name in business. A federal judge sided with them. Paolo Gucci could not be Paolo Gucci in commerce. His identity belonged to others. But Paolo still owned shares. 3.3%. A small stake, but enough to attend board meetings. Enough to ask questions. In 1982, he filed a $13 million lawsuit claiming breach of contract, emotional distress, and assault, alleging that his brothers Roberto and Giorgio and his cousin Maurizio had physically attacked him during a board meeting, instigated by his father. Aldo's response was chilling in its casualness. Who is the father who has never given a slap to a reckless son? Blood on the boardroom floor, family meetings ending in violence. The elegant Gucci boutiques with their bamboo handles and horsebit loafers, their promise of refinement and grace, stood in grotesque contrast to the reality behind them. Brothers fighting brothers, fathers against sons, uncle against nephew. The machinery of law replacing the bonds of family, with lawyers and judges arbitrating disputes that should have been settled over dinner, if they had still been capable of sitting at the same table. The press devoured it. Italy's favorite soap opera, the papers called it. The family that sold elegance to the world could not maintain civility among themselves. Every lawsuit became public, every insult reported, every violent incident detailed. The customers who paid premium prices for the Gucci name were buying more than leather. They were buying a story. But the story was turning dark, and they did not yet know how dark it would become, how the accusations and resentments accumulating in these years were building toward something far worse than lawsuits and thrown handbags. Paolo began investigating. When you own shares, you have rights to see the books. What Paolo discovered would give him a weapon more powerful than any lawsuit. His father had been taking millions, hiding income, cheating the government. And Paolo, angry and disinherited, was about to use that information to burn it all down. Rodolfo Gucci died in Milan on May 15, 1983. He was 71 years old, and with his death, the delicate balance that had kept the Gucci empire from imploding finally collapsed. His only son, Maurizio, inherited his father's entire 50% stake in the company. At 34 years old, Maurizio suddenly held the power his uncle Aldo had spent decades accumulating. Maurizio had lived a particular kind of life. His mother, actress Sandra Ravel, died when he was 5. His father raised him alone, protective and possessive. Rodolfo had not wanted Maurizio to marry Patrizia Reggiani back in 1972, calling her a social climber. But they reconciled after the birth of Alessandra in 1976 and Allegra in 1981. Now that father was gone. Maurizio stood at the threshold of control, majority shareholder. He saw what his uncle had done to the brand. Mass production, canvas bags sold everywhere. Gucci had become tacky instead of exclusive. This was not his grandfather's vision. Maurizio wanted restoration. True luxury, rarity. But transformation requires power, and Aldo still ran operations despite owning less. So Maurizio turned to his cousin Paolo, who had been fired and humiliated. In summer 1984, they made a deal. Paolo would vote his 3.3% with Maurizio's shares. In return, Maurizio promised $22 million for Paolo's stake. In September, they struck. Aldo was stripped of power, offered a figurehead position, then ejected completely when he fought back. But the alliance between cousins lasted only 2 months. Maurizio never paid Paolo the $22 million. Whether he couldn't or wouldn't remains ambiguous. Paolo, feeling betrayed once again, turned to the Italian authorities with information about Maurizio's inheritance. He claimed Maurizio had forged his father's signature on documents to avoid paying Italian inheritance taxes on Rodolfo's 50% stake. The accusation forced Maurizio to flee to Switzerland in 1986 to avoid arrest. He was convicted in absentia, but later acquitted on appeal. Still, the damage had been done. Aldo, from his own legal troubles with American tax, authorities watched his nephew scramble just as Paolo had once forced him to scramble. By the late 1980s, Maurizio had consolidated control. In 1989, he became chairman of Gucci. He had won the war for his grandfather's empire. What he did not yet understand was that winning control was not the same as knowing how to save it. And the greatest threat would not come from uncles or cousins, but from the woman he married, the woman his father warned him about, the woman already imagining a world where he no longer existed. She arrived at the party in 1970 wearing something calculated to be noticed. Her name was Patrizia Martinelli then, though she called herself Patrizia Reggiani after her wealthy stepfather adopted her. The daughter of a waitress and an absent father, she had been lifted from obscurity into Milan's social circles. But proximity to wealth is not the same as belonging, and Patrizia understood this with piercing clarity. Maurizio. Gucci was 22 when they met that evening. The only son of Rodolfo Gucci and actress Sandra Ravel, he moved through the world with the ease of someone who had never questioned whether he belonged. His mother died when he was 5. Maurizio had elegance but not hardness. Patrizia saw in him everything she wanted. Not just money, though that mattered. She saw entrance into a world that had always existed just beyond her reach. The Gucci name meant something. It opened doors. It commanded respect. It transformed ordinary existence into something approaching legend. Maurizio would later claim it was love at first sight. Perhaps he believed that. But his father saw something different when his son introduced Patrizia. Rodolfo called her a social climber who had nothing in mind but money, vulgar and ambitious. She is not the girl for you. He refused to attend their wedding. They married on October 28, 1972, despite his father's warnings. The ceremony was lavish with diamonds and champagne. The couple moved to New York City, where Maurizio worked under his uncle Aldo. They lived in a penthouse at the Olympic Tower, gifted by Rodolfo after their first daughter, Alessandra, was born in 1976. The arrival of grandchildren softened the old man's resistance. Their second daughter, Allegra, arrived in 1981. Patrizia threw herself into the role with ferocious dedication. She became an active socialite, photographed with Jackie Kennedy Onassis and Elizabeth Taylor. They accumulated properties like trophies: a chalet in St. Moritz, a 64-meter yacht called the Creole. She famously said it was better to cry in a Rolls-Royce than be happy on a bicycle. By 1982, they returned to Milan. Patrizia had become Maurizio's chief advisor at Gucci, shaping decisions, inserting herself into every aspect of the business. Some credited her with the company's success. Others saw her involvement as meddling, the behavior of someone who feared losing control. Then Rodolfo died in May of 1983. Maurizio inherited 50% of Gucci. Real power. His father had warned Patrizia years earlier, once he gets money and power, he will change. Rodolfo was right. The man Patrizia had married began to disappear into someone else, someone she could not reach, someone who no longer seemed to need her. And Patrizia, who had clawed her way from waitress's daughter to Gucci wife, was about to discover that losing what you fought so hard to gain creates a rage that does not simply fade. It metastasizes. It waits. It plans. On the morning of May 21, 1985, Maurizio Gucci packed a suitcase in their Milan apartment. He told Patrizia he was going to Florence for a few days. Business. Nothing unusual. He kissed his daughters goodbye, walked out the door, and never returned. The following day, a mutual friend arrived at the apartment. Not Maurizio, a friend. Sent to deliver a message Maurizio could not speak to her face. The marriage was over. He would not be coming back. Patrizia stood in the penthouse they had built together, surrounded by the Gucci name she had worn like a second skin for 13 years, and understood with crystalline clarity what was happening. She was being discarded, not through conversation or the slow dissolution that ends most marriages, but through cowardice, through a proxy delivering news that should have come from the man who had promised to love her. What she did not know then was that Maurizio had already been living a separate life. In 1984, he had met Sheree McLaughlin, an American woman, at a sailing championship in Sardinia. By the time he told Patrizia he was going to Florence, he had been conducting an affair for months. Patrizia later remembered the signs. He stopped coming home for lunch. His tone grew detached. "We spoke less," she said. But cold distance and abandonment are different thing. For years afterward, Maurizio asked Patrizia to maintain appearances, attend events with him, be photographed together. She complied, though it must have felt like performing her own humiliation. The relationship with McLaughlin lasted until 1990. That same year, Maurizio met Paola Franchi at a private club in St. Moritz. She was a childhood friend who had attended his wedding to Patrizia. They began living together. The divorce was finalized in 1994. Patrizia received an annual alimony of $1.47 million. By law, she could no longer use Gucci as her surname, but she continued using it anyway. "I still feel like a Gucci," she told reporters. In fact, the most Gucci of them all. The settlement seemed substantial, but to Patrizia, it felt like bones when she deserved the feast. He sold his remaining stake in the company to InvestCorp in 1993 for $170 million. She watched him become unimaginably wealthy while she received what she called a bowl of lentils. Maurizio planned to marry Paola Franchi. The marriage would cut Patrizia's alimony in half, $860,000 annually. Still a fortune by any measure. But Patrizia did not measure wealth in absolute terms. She kept journals. Every phone call with Maurizio recorded. Every slight documented. When asked why, she said, I didn't have anything better to do. But rage always finds something to do. And Patrizia's rage, cultivated over years of abandonment and humiliation, was about to find its purpose. There is a particular kind of rage that comes from humiliation, from watching someone rewrite history so that you no longer exist in it. Patrizia Reggiani had spent years marinating in that rage, documenting every slight, every interaction with Maurizio, filling journals with the evidence of her erasure. But documentation is passive. Rage, when left to ferment long enough, demands action. In the early 1990s, Patrizia began asking around Milan for someone brave enough to kill her husband. She would later admit this openly, her tone matter-of-fact, as if inquiring about hiring a contractor or finding a good restaurant. I went around asking the butcher and so on. She said, "Is anyone here brave enough to kill my husband?" The casual nature of these inquiries should have been terrifying. Instead, no one took her seriously. The scorned wife making dramatic statements, the socialite prone to theatrical pronouncements. No one believed she would actually follow through. Except one person did listen. Her name was Giuseppina Auriemma, though everyone called her Pina. She was Patrizia's friend, confidant, and self-proclaimed psychic. They had met at a health spa in the 1980s, Patrizia and Maurizio both encountering Pina during what should have been relaxation. The friendship deepened over years, with summers spent together in Capri, conversations about the future, readings where Pina claimed to see what was coming. Whether Pina actually believed in her psychic abilities remains unclear. What is certain is that she understood opportunity when she saw it. By 1994, Pina was struggling financially. She had once run her own Gucci franchise store, living adjacent to the wealth and status that defined Patrizia's world. But now she needed money, and Patrizia needed something else entirely. Pina moved into Patrizia's Milan apartment under the pretense of helping her write a tell-all book about Maurizio and the Gucci family. The book would expose everything: the affairs, the business failures, the way he had abandoned his family. It was a project born of revenge, and Pina positioned herself as the collaborator who would help Patrizia tell her story. But somewhere in those months of living together, of listening to Patrizia's increasingly dark fantasies about Maurizio's demise, Pina realized she could offer something more valuable than editing services. She could offer a solution to the problem that consumed her friend. She could find the people who would do what no one else believed Patrizia actually wanted done. The conspiracy began with a phone call. Pina reached out to Ivano Savioni, a hotel night porter at a modest one-star establishment in Milan, where Pina often stayed. Savioni was not a criminal mastermind. He was a working man with connections to people who operated in Milan's shadows, the network of individuals who knew how to make things happen when conventional channels would not suffice. Pina explained what was needed. Not explicitly at first, perhaps, but eventually the request became clear. Find someone willing to kill Maurizio Gucci. Find someone who would do it for money. Savioni contacted Orazio Ciccola, a man with his own debts and desperation. Ciccola agreed to be the getaway driver, but a driver needs someone to drive away from the scene. They needed the person who would actually pull the trigger. Ciccola knew someone. Benedetto Ciraulo, a pizzeria owner drowning in debt, struggling to keep his business afloat, willing to do something unthinkable for money that would solve his immediate problems. The conspiracy now had its shape. Patrizia providing the money and motive, Pina serving as the intermediary who organized everything, Savioni making the connections, Ciccola driving, Ciraulo killing. 5 people connected by a plan to murder a man whose only crime was leaving his wife and selling his family's company. The payment was reportedly more than $300,000, though some sources cite 600 million lira, roughly $365,000 at the exchange rate of the time. This was the price Patrizia agreed to pay for Maurizio's death. Not all at once. The money would come in installments, paid through Pina, who would distribute it to the others. The arrangement kept Patrizia at a remove, never directly meeting the men who would carry out the act. She could tell herself, perhaps, that she was merely funding Pina's activities, not explicitly ordering murder. But money sent with the understanding that someone will die is as much a murder weapon as the gun itself. They planned carefully. They needed to know Maurizio's routine, where he went, when he was most vulnerable. His office building on Via Palestro in Milan became the obvious target. He arrived most mornings around 8:30, walking from his car to the entrance, a few moments when he would be exposed, unprotected, accessible. The building had a doorman, Giuseppe Onorato, who would greet Maurizio as he entered. They would need to account for him as well. On the morning of March 27, 1995, Benedetto Ciraulo waited outside the office building at Via Palestro. He was dressed in ordinary clothes, nothing memorable, nothing that would draw attention. Orazio Cicala sat in a green Renault Clio, engine running, ready to drive, away the moment Ciraulo returned. It was shortly after 8:30 in the morning when Maurizio Gucci's car pulled up. Maurizio stepped out, carrying his newspaper, moving with the easy confidence of someone who did not believe he was in danger. He had told people that Patrizia might try to kill him. His former girlfriend, Cherie McLaughlin, would later recall his constant worry about this possibility. But worry and preparation are different things. Maurizio had no bodyguard, no security detail. He walked toward the entrance of his building alone. Giuseppe Onorato, the doorman, saw him approaching and opened the door. They exchanged a greeting. Normal, routine, the kind of interaction that happens every morning in cities around the world. Onorato later recalled that Maurizio seemed relaxed, untroubled. He had just climbed the steps, was about to enter, when Ciraulo approached from behind. 4 shots in rapid succession. 3 bullets struck Maurizio in the back. A 4th entered his head. He collapsed on the marble steps, his newspaper falling beside him. The ordinary morning suddenly shattered into something irrevocable. Onorato, witnessing the attack, moved toward Maurizio. Ciraulo fired twice more, hitting the doorman but not killing him. Then the assassin turned and ran to where Cicala waited in the Renault. The car pulled away from the curb and disappeared into Milan traffic. Maurizio Gucci died on the steps of his office building at 46 years old. The man who had inherited an empire, fought his family for control, lost millions trying to restore the brand to its former glory, sold his stake for $170 million, and planned to marry Paola Franchi, was gone. Dead in the most public way possible, gunned down like a character in a gangster film rather than a fashion executive starting his workday. The news exploded across Italy and then the world. The murder of Maurizio Gucci became instant headlines. The last Gucci to run this company shot outside his office. The circumstances were shocking enough, but the questions that followed were even more compelling. Who wanted him dead? Why? What enemies had he accumulated in his complicated life? Patrizia Reggiani heard the news and opened her Cartier diary. In the space for March 27, 1995, she wrote a single word in Greek. Paradisos. Paradise. That entry would later become one of the most damning pieces of evidence against her. Paradise. The day her former husband was murdered was paradise to her. No ambiguity, no attempt to appear grieving or shocked. Just one word that revealed everything about how she felt. But for nearly 2 years, the investigation went nowhere. Police had no suspects, no clear motive beyond speculation. Maurizio had business rivals, family members who resented him, complicated financial dealings. The list of people who might have wanted him dead seemed impossibly long. Patrizia attended his funeral, played the role of grieving ex-wife, maintained the fiction that she had nothing to do with his death. During those 2 years, Patrizia and Pina tried to maintain normalcy. They communicated through coded messages, careful not to say anything explicit that might be intercepted or overheard. Patrizia paid Pina regular monthly installments, money that Pina would then distribute to Savioni, Cicala, Ciabtuastita, and Ciraulo. The conspiracy held together through mutual self-interest. As long as everyone stayed quiet, they would all escape consequences. But conspiracies are fragile. They depend on trust between people who, by definition, have proven themselves untrustworthy. And money has a way of creating resentment, especially when the distribution feels unequal. By 1997, tensions were rising. Patrizia had not paid everything she owed. Whether she could not or would not remains ambiguous. The men who had carried out the murder began to feel cheated. They had done the dangerous work, taken the ultimate risk, and now the money was not materializing as promised. Ivano Savioni decided to take matters into his own hands. He reached out looking for another hitman. This time, the target was not Maurizio Gucci. It was Patrizia Reggiani herself. He wanted someone to threaten her, intimidate her into paying what she owed, by any means necessary. Violence, if required. What Savioni did not know was that he was talking to an undercover police officer. The authorities had received an anonymous tip about the murder, something that pointed them toward this group. They set up a sting operation, with an officer posing as a potential hitman willing to take the job. The conversations were recorded. Savioni talked openly about the murder of Maurizio Gucci, about Patrizia's involvement, about the money she still owed them. Every word was captured on wiretap. On January 31st, 1997, nearly 2 years after Maurizio's death, Italian police arrested all 5 conspirators, simultaneously. Patrizia Reggiani, Giuseppina Pina Auriemma, Ivano Savioni, Orazio Cicala, Benedetto Ciraulo. The investigation had finally connected all the pieces, followed the money, recorded the conversations, and now they had enough to charge everyone involved with premeditated murder. The trial that followed became Italy's favorite soap opera, as newspapers had once called the Gucci family feuds. But this was darker, more sensational than business disputes and thrown handbags. This was murder. The media dubbed Patrizia the Black Widow and Pina the Black Witch. Every day of the trial was covered extensively, every detail examined, every piece of evidence dissected by journalists and the public alike. Patrizia arrived at court each day wearing head-to-toe Gucci. The irony was not lost on anyone. She had been legally prohibited from using the surname after her divorce, but here she was, draping herself in the brand, reminding everyone that she still considered herself the most Gucci of them all. Her daughters, Alessandra and Allegra, now in their early 20s and late teens, argued that their mother's conviction should be overturned. She had undergone surgery for a brain tumor in 1992, they said. The tumor had affected her behavior, her personality, her ability to think clearly. She could not be held responsible for actions taken when her brain was compromised. Patrizia herself maintained throughout the trial that she was innocent. She claimed that Pina had orchestrated everything and then blackmailed her for money. She presented herself as a victim, manipulated by a friend she trusted. But then, in a moment that undermined her entire defense, she said something else. When discussing the money she had paid, she remarked that it was worth every lira. The statement contradicted everything her lawyers were arguing. If she was blackmailed, if she was innocent, if she had no idea what Pina was doing, why would she say the money was worth it? Pina Auriemma confessed to her role. She testified that Patrizia had paid her $365,000 to arrange the killing. She explained how she had contacted Savioni, how the plan had developed, how the conspiracy had taken shape. She acknowledged her guilt while also suggesting she had been used, that Patrizia was the true architect. In later interviews, Pina would say that something had snapped in Patrizia when Maurizio left her. Maybe it was a blow to her narcissism. She had asked all of Milan to find a murderer, and Pina was the only fool who took her seriously. The evidence was overwhelming. The diary entry, the witness testimony, the recorded phone conversations, the money trail, the fact that Patrizia had openly asked people if they would kill her husband. In 1998, all 5 were convicted. Benedetto Ciraulo received a life sentence for pulling the trigger. Orazio Cicala got 29 years for driving. Ivano Savioni received 26 years for facilitating. Pina Auriemma was sentenced to 25 years for organizing. And Patrizia Reggiani received 29 years for orchestrating the entire plot. The sentence was later reduced to 26 years on appeal. Patrizia would serve 18 years before being released in October 2016. During her time in prison, she attempted suicide once, hanging herself with a bedsheet before guards found her. She also famously refused parole in 2011 when she became eligible for a work release program. "I have never worked in my life," she said, "and I am certainly not going to start now." The statement was vintage Patrizia, defiant, unapologetic, convinced that the world had wronged her rather than the other way around. On the day of her conviction, as Patrizia Reggiani was being led away to begin her sentence, Gucci's flagship store in Florence displayed something unusual in its windows. The details of what exactly was displayed vary in reports, but the message was clear. The company wanted to distance itself from the scandal, from the murder, from the dark story that had consumed the family, whose name still adorned boutiques around the world. The Gucci family was no longer part of Gucci. The name had been sold. The business belonged to others. And Patrizia, the woman who had married into the family, who had called herself the most Gucci of them all, would spend the next 2 decades behind bars, imprisoned by the rage she had allowed to consume her completely. The morning of March 27, 1995, arrived in Milan with the particular softness that characterizes early spring in northern Italy. The kind of morning when winter's grip has finally released and the city feels reborn, when light touches the historic buildings differently, when people walk with a lighter step because the worst of the cold has passed. It was a Tuesday. The streets of Milan moved with their usual rhythm. Cafes opened, traffic accumulated, the city prepared for another day of business, fashion, commerce, life. Maurizio Gucci woke in the apartment he shared with Paola Franchi. They had been together for 5 years now, living in 2 connected apartments that accommodated her son Charlie, and when they visited, Maurizio's daughters Alessandra and Allegra. At 46 years old, Maurizio had finally achieved a kind of peace after years of chaos. The company was no longer his. He had sold his remaining stake to Investcorp in 1993 for $170 million, divesting himself and his family completely from the business his grandfather had built. Some saw this as betrayal. Maurizio saw it as liberation. His divorce from Patrizia had been finalized the year before. She received an annual alimony of $1.47 million, substantial by any measure, though Patrizia had called it a bowl of lentils. He paid it. He tried to maintain some relationship with his daughters despite Patrizia's interference. He lived quietly with Paola, planning, some said, to eventually marry her. After decades of family warfare, business struggles, legal battles, and the constant machinery of maintaining the Gucci empire, Maurizio was attempting something revolutionary for a man of his background. He was trying to be simply himself, not the heir, not the chairman, not the last Gucci to run Gucci. Just a man approaching 50, planning a future that did not revolve around boardrooms and boutiques. That morning, he prepared for work at his private office, located at Via Palestro number 20, one of Milan's elegant streets where old money and new commerce intersected. He dressed in a suit, gathered his newspapers and magazines, kissed Paola goodbye. The morning commute was short. He drove himself. No security detail, no bodyguard, no precautions despite having told people that Patrizia might try to kill him. His former girlfriend, Cherie McLaughlin, would later recall that he constantly worried about this possibility. But worry without action is just another form of hope. Hope that the thing you fear will not actually materialize. Maurizio parked near his office building shortly before 8:30. He stepped out of his car carrying his newspapers, moving with the easy confidence of a man who belonged in this neighborhood, in this city, in this life. He walked toward the entrance where Giuseppe Onorato, the building's doorman, was sweeping leaves from the front steps. Spring brought beauty, but also the debris of winter's ending, the dead growth that needed clearing before new life could fully emerge. Onorato saw Maurizio approaching. It was a lovely spring morning, very quiet, he would later recall. Mr. Gucci arrived carrying some magazines and said good morning. A normal greeting, the kind exchanged thousands of times between these two men over however long Maurizio had occupied his office in this building. Onorato opened the door. Maurizio climbed the steps. Another morning, another day of work, another moment that felt unremarkable because both men believed the next moment would come, and then the one after that, the way moments do, an endless procession stretching toward some distant future neither could see but both assumed would arrive. Then Onorato saw a hand, a beautiful, clean hand, he said later, and it was pointing a gun. Benedetto Ciraulo had been waiting. The pizzeria owner-turned-assassin had positioned himself where he could see Maurizio arrive, where he could approach from behind, where he would have those few seconds of vulnerability as Maurizio climbed the steps, his back exposed, his attention focused on the door, on the greeting, on the beginning of his workday. Ciraulo carried a 7.65mm pistol. He moved quickly. He raised the weapon. 3 shots in rapid succession struck Maurizio in the back. The sound shattered that lovely, quiet morning. Maurizio fell forward on the marble steps, his newspapers scattering, his body collapsing with the sudden weight that comes when a human form no longer obeys the commands of the consciousness inhabiting it. A 4th shot entered his head. The execution shot. The one that removes any possibility of survival, any chance that the victim might identify the attacker, any hope that this is not fatal. Onorato, witnessing the attack, moved instinctively toward Maurizio. Perhaps he thought he could help. Perhaps he did not think at all, but simply reacted with the courage or foolishness that defines those who rush toward danger when others flee. Ciraulo turned the gun on him. 2 more shots. Both struck Onorato in the arm. He fell but did not die. He crawled to where Maurizio lay bleeding on the marble steps. I was cradling Mr. Gucci's head, he would tell investigators later. He died in my arms. Ciraulo ran. Orazio Cicala sat waiting in a green Renault Clio, engine running, parked with the practiced casualness of someone who knows exactly where to position a getaway car. The car pulled from the curb as Ciraulo jumped in and disappeared into Milan traffic. 2 minutes, maybe 3, from arrival to escape, from alive to dead, from spring morning to crime scene. By the time emergency services arrived, there was nothing to be done. Maurizio Gucci, grandson of Guccio Gucci, son of Rodolfo Gucci, the last family member to control the Gucci empire, was dead at 46 years old on the steps of his office building in broad daylight in one of Milan's most elegant neighborhoods. The murder was brazen in its execution, public in its setting, professional in its efficiency. This was not a crime of passion committed in the heat of an argument. This was planned, paid for, coordinated. The news detonated across Italy within hours. Maurizio Gucci murdered. Shot outside his office. The headlines screamed the sensational nature of the crime. Who kills a fashion executive at 8:30 in the morning? Who assassinates someone on the steps of their workplace? The questions multiplied faster than the answers. Paola Franchi heard the news that her partner was dead. She rushed to the apartment at Corso Venezia that had belonged to Maurizio and now belonged to his daughters. She wanted to grieve, to be near the places that reminded her of him. But within 24 hours, Patrizia Reggiani had her forcibly removed from the property. The man was not yet buried, and already the battle over his legacy had begun. Patrizia heard the news of Maurizio's death while at home. According to later testimony, she opened her Cartier diary and in the space for March 27, 1995, wrote a single word in Greek: paradisos, paradise. One word that would later become one of the most damning pieces of evidence against her. Not shock, not grief, not even the pretense of sorrow, just paradise. The day her former husband was murdered was paradise to her. She attended his funeral, playing the role of grieving, ex-wife, mother of his children, woman who had once loved him before it all fell apart. She wore black. She wept publicly. She maintained the fiction that she had nothing to do with his death. And for nearly 2 years, that fiction held. The investigation struggled. Milan police had too many suspects and not enough evidence. Maurizio had enemies accumulated over years of family warfare. His uncle Aldo, whom he had ousted from power, had died in 1990. But the resentment from that branch of the family remained. His cousin Paolo, who had sued everyone and been sued by everyone, was still alive and still bitter. The list of relatives who might want Maurizio dead seemed endless. Then there were his business dealings. Maurizio had borrowed $40 million from a man accused of having terrorist connections. That kind of debt creates dangerous enemies. His mismanagement of Gucci had cost the company millions, creating corporate enemies who might have wanted him removed. The casino connections, the failed ventures, the complicated financial web that surrounds anyone handling that much money. Every thread investigators pulled seemed to lead to another possible suspect. But some investigators kept returning to Patrizia. She had motive. She had publicly stated she wanted him dead. Multiple witnesses would later testify that she had asked them if they knew anyone brave enough to kill her husband, her housekeeper, her friends. She had inquired with the casualness of someone asking for restaurant recommendations. I went around asking the butcher and so on, she would later admit. Is anyone here brave enough to kill my husband? Yet asking is not the same as doing. Wanting someone dead is not the same as arranging their murder. The police needed more than her theatrical statements and obvious resentment. They needed evidence, a connection, proof that she had moved from fantasy to action, from rage to conspiracy. For 2 years, the investigation stalled. The 5 conspirators maintained their silence, held together by mutual self-interest and the money Patrizia continued to pay through Pina. They communicated in coded language. They avoided anything explicit in writing or recorded conversation. They believed they had gotten away with it, that the sheer number of other suspects would keep the police occupied indefinitely, that Maurizio's murder would eventually become another unsolved crime in a city that had seen many. But conspiracies are fragile structures. They require trust between fundamentally untrustworthy people. They require everyone to receive what they believe they are owed. And by 1997, the foundation was cracking. Patrizia had not paid everything she promised. Whether she could not or would not remains ambiguous, but the result was the same. The men who had risked everything, who had committed murder, who could be executed or imprisoned for life if caught, were not receiving full compensation. Resentment grew. Benedetto Ciraulo, who had actually pulled the trigger, felt particularly cheated. He had done the most dangerous work, taken the greatest risk, and now the money was not materializing as promised. Ivano Savioni, the hotel porter who had organized the connections between Pina and the killer, decided to take action. He reached out looking for someone who could threaten Patrizia, intimidate her into paying what she owed. He wanted a hitman, not to kill her exactly, but to frighten her, to make her understand that the people she had hired were not patient, were not forgiving, were capable of violence. By any means necessary, he said. Violence if required. What Savioni did not know was that he was talking to an undercover police officer. The authorities had received an anonymous tip. Someone, perhaps motivated by conscience or by their own grievances, had contacted the police with information about the murder. The name they gave was Gucci. Just that. The rest required investigation, surveillance, patience. The police set up a sting operation. An officer posed as a hitman willing to take the job of threatening Patrizia. The conversations were recorded. Everything Savioni said was captured on wiretap. And in those recordings, he talked openly about the murder of Maurizio Gucci, about Patrizia's involvement, about the money she owed, about how they had killed him on her orders, and now she was not paying. It was everything the police needed, the confession hidden inside a criminal conspiracy to commit another crime. The thread that, when pulled, unraveled the entire network. On January 31st, 1997, nearly 2 years after Maurizio's death, Italian police executed simultaneous arrests. Patrizia Reggiani, Giuseppina Pina Auriemma, Ivano Savioni, Orazio Cicala, Benedetto Ceraulo. All 5 conspirators taken into custody at once. No warning, no chance to coordinate their stories or destroy evidence or flee. The trial would come later. The spectacle of the Black Widow and the Black Witch facing justice for arranging a murder that shocked Italy. But on that morning in January, as police led Patrizia away in handcuffs, as the news broke that Maurizio Gucci's ex-wife had been arrested for his murder, the story finally had its ending. Or perhaps not its ending. Perhaps just the next chapter in a tragedy that had been written decades earlier. The moment a craftsman in Florence decided to make beautiful leather goods and accidentally created a dynasty that would consume his descendants in ways he could never have imagined. When the police sealed the marble steps on Via Palestro, the Gucci dynasty was already over. Not legally, not symbolically, but existentially. The man who lay dead that morning was not simply a former chairman or a disgraced heir. Maurizio Gucci was the last living bridge between a Florentine craftsman and a global empire. With his death, the family name became a logo without a lineage. Inside, the Milan offices once occupied by Maurizio, there was confusion, not grief. Files were catalogued, locks were changed, schedules resumed. Business did what it always does when tragedy arrives. It absorbs and continues. The murder shocked Italy, but within Gucci itself, the crisis had already passed years earlier. The brand had been bleeding long before blood ever touched marble. Mismanagement, internal wars, and catastrophic financial decisions had weakened it beyond repair. Maurizio's death was not the collapse. It was the punctuation mark. By the time the investigation began to seriously examine his murder, Gucci was no longer a family business in any meaningful sense. In 1993, Maurizio had sold the remaining family stake to Investcorp, ending nearly 70 years of Gucci ownership. The house his grandfather built was already in the hands of outsiders when he was killed. That detail mattered more than the public realized, because it meant something uncomfortable. Maurizio Gucci did not die protecting the company. He died after losing it. The investigation moved slowly, almost cautiously. Milanese authorities had too many possible motives and too many potential enemies. Family resentment, financial disputes, organized crime speculation, business rivals. Each theory collapsed under scrutiny, except one: Patrizia Reggiani. Her behavior did not match grief. It matched relief. Friends recalled her speaking openly about wanting Maurizio dead years before it happened. Staff testified that she asked casually whether anyone knew someone brave enough to kill her husband. Not in whispers, not in rage-filled moments. Calmly. Still, wanting death and arranging murder are not the same thing. The police needed proof. For nearly 2 years, nothing moved. And during those 2 years, Patrizia lived freely. She attended events, she wore designer clothes, she referred to herself as a Gucci, despite the divorce settlement forbidding it. She wrote, she documented, she curated her own mythology. But money creates fractures. The people who carried out the killing had not been fully paid. Resentment grew. Silence weakened. When one of the conspirators tried to arrange another act of intimidation, he unknowingly spoke to an undercover officer. That was the crack. Everything followed from there. Wiretaps, arrests, confessions. In January of 1997, Patrizia Reggiani was taken into custody. Italy did not see a grieving widow led away. It saw a fallen queen, and the trial that followed would transform a family tragedy into a public reckoning. The courtroom did not resemble justice, it resembled theater. Photographers crowded the entrance each morning. Headlines competed for the most theatrical phrasing. Patrizia Reggiani became something other than a defendant. She became a character. The press called her the Black Widow. She arrived dressed in black, wearing Gucci accessories, projecting defiance rather than remorse. The choice was deliberate. She wanted the world to see her as she believed she was. Not abandoned, not discarded, still powerful, but power does not survive evidence. Prosecutors laid out the chain methodically. The intermediary, the driver, the shooter, the payments, the diary entry written in Greek on the day of Maurizio's murder. Paradise. That single word destroyed any remaining ambiguity. Patrizia's defense centered on manipulation. She claimed she had been exploited by her confidant, Giuseppina Auriemma, portrayed as a schemer who acted independently. But the financial records contradicted her. The testimonies contradicted her. The recordings contradicted her. Most devastating was her own mouth. At one point, she referred to the money paid for the killing as worth it. That sentence echoed through the courtroom long after it was spoken. In 1998, the verdict arrived. Guilty. Patrizia Reggiani was sentenced to 29 years in prison, later reduced on appeal. The men who carried out the murder received longer sentences. The conspiracy was legally complete, but justice did not feel complete. Maurizio was gone. The family was broken. The brand had moved on. Prison stripped Patrizia of luxury, but not identity. She refused work assignments. She attempted suicide. She maintained that she was misunderstood rather than responsible. When offered early release contingent on employment, she declined. She had never worked, she said. She would not start now. Even incarceration could not force humility. Outside prison walls, Gucci entered its rebirth. Under new creative leadership, the brand transformed. Sexual, aggressive, modern, profitable. Everything the family had failed to make it. The irony was almost cruel. Gucci only thrived once the Guccis were gone. And yet something lingered. A question no one fully answered. Was the tragedy inevitable? Or did it begin decades earlier, when love was replaced by control and legacy by entitlement? Maurizio's daughters grew up without him. Patrizia emerged years later into a world that no longer cared about her version of events. The name she fought to possess had outgrown her entirely. And the marble steps on Via Palestro were walked over every day by people who no longer remembered what happened there. But history remembers, because this story was never about murder. It was about erosion, the slow decay of family into rivalry, of craftsmanship into obsession, of love into ownership. Gucci wanted to create beauty. What he created instead was a dynasty that could not survive itself. And here is the unsettling truth. The Gucci story did not end with a gunshot. It ended when no one left alive could say they belonged. And yet there is one final detail that almost no one talks about. A decision made quietly, years later, involving a name, an inheritance, and a silence that still has not been broken. If you think the Gucci tragedy truly ended in that courtroom, you are missing the final shadow still hanging over this story. If you want to uncover it, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because some legacies do not die, they wait.